All right, let's welcome back in our friends. The former Lieutenant Governor of New York, Newsmax contributor Betsy McCoy is here. We're also joined by the former National Press Secretary at the Trump campaign and Principal Deputy Press Secretary at the White House, Hogan Gidley. And joining us on set for the second day this week, lucky to have Project 21 National Advisory Board member and radio host Christopher Arps with us this morning. Hope you all heard that, by the way, from the senator. That coming from Senator Rick Santorum, Hogan. How about that, huh?
I work for Rick Santorum. Yep. I work for Rick Santorum. He's known for hyperbole, so that's probably maybe was an overreach there.
Touché.
No, I'm kidding. Nah, he's great. He's great. You're great. Everyone's great.
We're all great. Okay, you know what's not great?
Right.
What's not great, Betsy, is this $1.7 trillion spending bill. I don't know why a continuing resolution, why that didn't happen already, to get this into the new year and let the Republicans take over Congress. How do you see this playing out today? And I'll add to that, look, Rick Santorum just said it. The weather plays a role. There's 200 congressmen that are still in Washington right now that are going to want to vote on this thing and try to get back to wherever they're going.
Look, let's discuss the real issues here. That this isn't a democracy anymore. When you look at what the Senate did, the juvenile nature of this, Senator Patrick Leahy, head of the Appropriations Committee, he was steering this bill all the way through, this enormous omnibus spending bill. He voted to rename the federal lunch program after himself. That's like high school.
Well, it's a legacy play.
Nancy Pelosi, she's going to vote to rename a huge federal office building in San Francisco after herself.
Yeah.
Is that what we send people to Washington to do?
So
not solve problems, but simply this kind of juvenile maneuvering.
No, Betsy, you make a fantastic point.
Who make all the decisions, and nobody else ever reads the bill,
right,
has no contribution to what's in the bill, and we call this a representative democracy. We should stop paying all these members of Congress. They're not doing their job.
Yeah, Betsy, you make a great point. There's 535 elected officials in the House and Senate. I think two have probably read this, Rand Paul and Thomas Massie, and I think that's probably it. But I don't want to be too partisan with this, Chris, because there's always pork. Somebody in his district wants to rename the post office. That is in every single funding bill, and it's been like that for more than a century. However, there is $800 billion of discretionary spending in this bill. That's the most ever. So the problem, to Betsy's point, is getting a lot worse.
Yeah, there are 7,200 earmarks that are in this bill. That equals $15 billion. We talked about it last hour, where there's an appropriation for gender studies, related studies in Pakistan, which that surprises me because Pakistan is an Islamic country. They're very conservative. So I can't imagine them spending money for a liberal pet project. I really think this is just a slush fund for Pakistani generals.
Yeah. Hogan, your take?
Yeah, look, a lot of great points made here today. We've got a difficult road here because, look, I understand that the congressmen and the senators want to get home for Christmas. Everyone wants to get home for Christmas. But the fact is, do your job. And it's not like this deadline came out of nowhere. I mean, look, Thanksgiving, they all know when that is. They all know when Christmas is. They all know when New Year's is. You also know when the deadline is to fund the government. Why these people wait until the last minute to shove all this pork into a bill just to self-aggrandize? Oh, wait, that may be the reason. 25 times in this bill, they're renaming post offices after themselves. Betsy hit on some of those measures as well.
Yeah.
This whole thing is pork barrel spending. The American people are going to suffer because of it. They aren't targeting their legislation to what the American people want, definitely not what the American people need. That's always been a problem in Washington, D.C. on both sides of the aisle. I would just urge people to vote for those who will get up here to D.C. to do their job and represent your best interests instead of their own.
Yeah, great point. Let's defend the sovereignty of 5 countries that I bet you 90% of Americans couldn't find on a map.
99%.
Literally. Jordan, Lebanon, Egypt, Tunisia, and Oman. $410 million. It's your money. You're watching right now. It's taxpayer money. Joe Biden was asked about why the border is not included in this $1.7 trillion bill when he was delivering his annual Christmas message.
Mr. President, do you think the southern border is secure?
Sir, do you believe 2023 will be the year the war ends in Ukraine?
Yeah, I think part of the reason they didn't address this in the budget because we have the crisis going down in the border, and if they debated this in Congress and amendments, that would highlight that, and they don't want that right now.
They want this crisis to continue The bill actually prohibits funding to solve
Yep.
this crisis. These are the future Democratic voters of America. Let's say it the way it is.
Yeah, and I've said
That's
this
what they
before.
think it's going to be for sure, because this is a purely political power grab. And believe it to Joe Biden on Christmas Eve to turn his back on the journalists and turn his back on the American people and say, I'm not going to deal with it. It's your problem.
Well, get used to it. I think we'll see more of that as we get closer to 2024. Chuck Schumer was talking yesterday about the $45 billion in this bill for Ukraine.
Well, I'm just befuddled by some of these right-wing Republicans who don't want to help Ukraine. It's always been the harder right you were, the more anti-Soviet you were, the more anti-Russian you were, and all of a sudden, they're pro. And I hope it's not a residue of Trump. Trump had a relationship with Putin that was poisonous for American security.
Hogan, I don't even know how Trump has anything to do with this conversation. The man hasn't been in elected office for more than 2 years. But look, he's wrong. It is unanimous in Congress. Even though Lauren Boebert and Matt Gaetz wouldn't stand up and applaud Zelensky when he spoke 2 nights ago, everyone supports the cause of the Ukrainian people. They're defending their sovereignty. We get that. We support them. We've supported them for tomorrow will mark 10 months of the war. It's actually Dr. Fauci's birthday, too. He turns 82 years old. Happy birthday, Dr. Fauci, if you're watching. But the fact that there's no money in this bill for our own southern border, people have an issue. People take issue with that. There's not a dollar for our own sovereignty.
It's a top 3 issue for the American people for polling in the last midterm elections. I do think Mitch McConnell, I do think Chuck Schumer completely tone deaf on this issue. They refuse to address it in large part, as Betsy mentioned, because Democrats want the people in this country to vote for them. And they think if you can get them here and put them on the government dole, the government dime, that there'll be voters for Democrats for generations to come. It's all about politics for these folks. Chuck Schumer, way off on this. And you see how he always applauds Republicans for their unity when they support what he wants. But when they're unified against what he wants, somehow now they're insurrectionists or enemies to democracy. This whole thing is political theater. Chuck Schumer is horrible at his job. Chuck Schumer has horrible political instincts, and policy chops are lacking as well because they just continue to hurt the American people.
All right. Chris Arps, Hogan Gidley, Betsy McCoy, really appreciate you joining us this morning.
Merry
There's so
Christmas.
much going on this time of year.
Merry Christmas.
I appreciate you making the time for me and us here on Wake Up bright and early. Good to see you. Have a great Christmas. We'll pick this back up next week. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We got a lot more coming up on Wake Up America. Sam